Thank you so much, Helga Fasciano. I'm with the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, and my current role there is as the Special Assistant for Global Education. And so one of the things I would like to share with this group here is I have a handout that's kind of like a front and back about what the State Board of Education's initiative is all about. I will say to you that partnerships like this are extremely key to ensuring that we have students that are going to be graduating our public schools that are not only college and career ready, but also prepared to be a globally engaged and productive citizen. And there's lots of facets to that. So these types of interactions, number one, having been that educator in the classroom myself, are extremely exciting. And so when it comes to having interactions like what we've seen with the Moldovan partnerships, it provides that opportunity for those students and also for our educators to begin to frame and analyze and be able to figure out how to best communicate, because maybe the way I said that wasn't, number one, clear, but number two, could also maybe culturally not be appropriate for the audience that I'm speaking to. So all of those things to take into consideration. And it's like everything else, experiential learning is kind of that piece that once it happens, it sticks right here.
Good morning to everyone in North Carolina. My name is Daniela Munkavtenev. I'm the president of Academy for Innovation and Change Through Education, the NGO that coordinates North Carolina, Republic of Moldova Service Learning School Partnership Project. I have one question for our colleagues, the representatives of those 10 schools that are involved in this cross-Atlantic initiative. In Republic of Moldova, we place great emphasis on developing student communication skills and especially communicating in a foreign language. In most of our schools, our students study Russian, English, French, and in some of them they study German, and it is very important for our graduates to be able to communicate in those foreign languages. Tell us about what is important for schools in North Carolina. Which skills do you focus on, and how do you prepare your students to develop those skills? Thank you, and good luck with our project.
With the State Board of Education, we do develop, as part of what is general statute, the standard course of study for K-12 public school students. And it is that standard course of study that provides the framework that then our school districts and then down to the school level, down to those individual classroom teachers, where curriculum is developed in order to address those standards, those learning standards. So when we think of world languages, in North Carolina, our North Carolina Essential World Language Standards are proficiency-based. We are the only state that has done that kind of leveling. We use the National ACTFL Proficiency Scale, and we do have within that, using dual language immersion as a starting base as well, students do achieve higher levels of proficiency by the time they graduate, when they've had those experiences. So with that, we actually start at the novice all the way up to the advanced mid, covering that territory. The other incentive that is currently available is our North Carolina Global Languages endorsement, which is one of the 5 high school endorsements available for our graduates, where they can then note what their language is and their proficiency level. So with that said, what's extremely important in the day-to-day instruction is providing really task performance types of activities where the students have the opportunity to not only from the beginning levels, reutilize memorized phrases, but to be able to begin to grow their proficiency to the point where now they can take those phrases and rework them and recombine them as they're moving through the levels of higher attainment of proficiency. So we're going from what we might call the parrot phase, where that's literally what we're doing, we're mimicking back, up to the survivor stage, and that's where you're struggling a little bit, to, but you're able to make yourself understood. And then moving into what we call the storyteller stage, which is where that person has enough of the language where they can actually paint a picture for someone and tell a story, utilizing language that actually comes back to perhaps academic language or what we might consider a higher tier of language usage in order to be able to get that thing across. So that is kind of the beginning basics of that. And it is driven towards not grammar instruction anymore. That is really, if you're going to be teaching one of the classical languages, that's what you do. You basically do a lot of grammar and translation, and so we think of Latin or perhaps the Old Greek, not modern Greek. Those are the classical languages, that's the methodology. But to learn a world language, opportunities for those students to use that language as they're speaking and as they're writing is extremely important. And that's where, for instance, this particular exchange, this partnership, is such a boost and a lot of excitement for those students in Moldova. So congratulations for being able to participate and make that happen.
Well, we teach communication, so it depends on the topic you have. For example, I teach beginning French. Of course, at the beginning, they don't have a lot of communication phrases in French, but they do learn some, and then you give them a task. And then based on that task, they first develop a dialogue with a partner or maybe within a group, and then they present it. So that's a perfect, first level French communication.
For me, I think it always goes back to real world application. And I remember growing up, we lived in a neighborhood where that was predominantly Black and Hispanic. And I had Hispanic neighbors, and of course they teach you all the words you're not supposed to know first. But then after a while, you start to pick up when you're in their home and you eat avocado and their parent says something, you can kind of make out the phrase and you can kind of understand. So it goes back again to that idea of being able to communicate on a level where you have a shared value for that and appreciation for that language. So although I'm not a world language teacher, I'm still a language arts teacher, and it's all about the word and how to articulate and communicate using language. So another experience that I can think about is my daughter just went for her study abroad to Paris, and she's been studying Spanish all throughout high school and for her first couple of years in college. And then she had to learn French to go to Paris, obviously. And she said she came home very excited, because I was very nervous for the whole 2 weeks she was there. But she came home very excited. She said, the Asian kid in my class, I had to get him to the bathroom because he couldn't ask to get to the bathroom. I helped him out. And, just that idea that you can navigate your way through the world in other languages. So I think, again, it's real-world application.
Dear colleagues from North Carolina, I am Natalia Chaban, a participant at North Carolina-Moldova Service Learning School Partnership Project. As I am a teacher of foreign language, I am eager to know the following. What is the maximum number of students during the classes of foreign languages in your country? Thank you.
So that's getting ready to change. So in terms of that, there are some state laws that talk about maximums of the number of students in a classroom. But the schools, the districts have the flexibility to be able to do groupings that might be most advantageous, and also to be able to provide more opportunities for their students. Okay, so that's the bottom line. So there are some general statutes. So there was some talk about, for the earlier question, about the fact that we have lost a lot of ground in our elementary language courses. And so part of that is because of the fact that it is not required in the state of North Carolina to offer languages at all, to be honest with you. What we do have by law is the standard course of study that addresses that. All right, so we do have the framework, but it is still up to our districts and our schools, going back down to the school principal level, to determine what is offered. And because of the way the teacher numbers work, your world language teacher is competing against a health education teacher, a physical education teacher, an arts education teacher for some of those same slots. So to put it very simply, if the school, an elementary school, has only 3 of those positions available to them, then they have to make decisions amongst all of those categories. And that's just the reality of the things right now. So we do hope that some of this will change. What has changed is with dual language immersion, we're no longer competing for that category, and that frees up space for our arts educators and for our health and physical educators. So this is wonderful news. And then those students, that falls into the regular allotment. So what they're actually doing is learning content, academic content in that language as well as in English. So they actually split the day or the content and say, we're going to do math in Spanish, we're going to do the science in English. With the Japanese, I know you've seen that, change back and forth over the years as to which content gets taught. But that's a very different level. So if we're looking at the elementary grade, those teachers could have 2 or 3 classrooms coming to them at one time. So they might have a group of anywhere from 30 to 60 children at one time, because they're basically going through and hitting all those grade levels. And they may see them once a week, maybe 3 times a week, depending on how it gets scheduled. Once we get to middle school, so grade 6, 7, and 8, and if they do offer, again, a world language, then you may have a semester-long class, and then that kind of fits into anywhere from 17, say, to up to 30 students, depending on the interest that is there. And then in the high school, it is the same kind of thing. There's that flexibility. So the higher the levels go, you may end up with some larger numbers because you have students who won't take them, but they don't have enough to split it into 2 sections. So there's a lot of flexibility there. World languages is one of those in our country where you have some laws that regulate the numbers that are supposed to be in a classroom, but again, coming back down to that flexibility. So I wish I could tell you that it's one number or the other, but it does switch around. And it does depend also on what the interest of the students are as to how many students are in those classrooms.
Being in the elementary school classroom, we don't, and we're also in a very rural area. Swansboro is much tinier than Charlotte, and we do not have a language teacher at our school at all. We actually are starting something this year where the teachers are learning a little bit of Spanish, and we're then teaching it to our students, and we're going to implement this a little bit each year to add on to that, because we feel like Spanish is probably one of the more important ones for our kids to know a little bit of at least. I do know that they do have a Spanish immersion program at the school that's the next neighboring school to ours, and the elementary school. So they're starting in our area, but we don't have the resources that Charlotte sometimes does. And the bigger cities usually have a little bit more advantages than we do.
In my class, I think the biggest was 15 students. That was the biggest class I ever had in ESL. When it comes to French, I'm in an IB school, which is International Baccalaureate, and we do teach Chinese, Spanish, French. So usually the average classroom of a beginning French would be the average 30 students. When it goes already intermediate and advanced French, you usually have fewer students because some of them did not make it to the other levels.
Hello everybody, I'm Tatiana Solomka. I am a Moldovan teacher of foreign languages and one of the participants to the North Carolina-Moldova Service Learning Project. I have a question to you. So, every 5 years, teachers in Moldova have to pass throughout an attestation. We have to do a lot of written stuff to prove we've been working hard during these years and fulfill a lot of requirements. I wonder if you have something like this or a similar thing. Thank you.
We have the renewal cycle, that's a 5-year program, and we have to take so many credits of language arts, so many of technology, basic courses, concentration, and literacy. So we do have something like that where you have to renew your certification for as a North Carolina teacher, licensure.
We also, in the U.S., there's something called the National Board of Professional Teaching Standards. I'm a National Board Certified Teacher, and that is a much more extensive certification process where we do have that writing piece, and you have to video yourself, and it's a tremendous reflection piece on yourself as a teacher. That is much more intensive, I think, than most of the renewal recertification programs where you take the class and you get a certificate that says you took the class, and then you send that into the state and they renew your certification. So it's not as much of a written portfolio, but the national board is more of that, more intense. It's optional, yes.
You're within those 5 years, it's 2 a year for 20 minutes. In your renewal year, it's 3 45-minute observations, just to make sure that you're still teaching what you're supposed to be teaching in the classroom, and to give you any feedback that you might need as technology increases and as different things change in the teaching field.
What are the differences of teachers' degree working in elementary or high school?
And in North Carolina, you have to have a minimum of a 4-year degree, so a bachelor's degree.
Well, normally, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I have an elementary education bachelor's degree, so my 4-year degree. I teach high school, so I have a certification to teach elementary, middle, and high school. Normally, your high school teachers, this is their second career, and they have majored specifically in, if it's an English teacher, they're doing English. If it's a chemistry teacher, they majored in chemistry. So normally, your high school teachers are very content specific in what they went to school for, and your elementary is just general throughout.
Most people probably don't know this, but my undergraduate is in music education, and our certification is K-12. We can teach elementary music, chorus, band, orchestra, guitar, anything along those lines at any grade level.
I think maybe the question was dealing with, is it important to get good grades and why? So I'm thinking maybe what is the perspective for the students? What is important?
Okay, so coming here, it was kind of surprising to see that kids could be held back grades. When you talk about marks and grades, to me that kind of suggests that maybe a lot of people are looking at attainment. And in England, we look a lot at progress. You start here, and you've made all this progress. It doesn't matter if you're on the right grade level, look at how much you've learned in this year. And I think there's a lot of talk about that in North Carolina as well. I'm not saying we don't do that. But at the end of the year, it's kind of horrifying to give this one test and tell them this is the test.
I also think that the grade is important from the standpoint of admittance to a college or university. So the higher is the grade, the higher chances you have to get into the university that you have chosen.
Now I would like to give you an opportunity to share about your school-to-school partnership. What do you enjoy the most about the North Carolina-Moldova Service Learning School Partnership Project? What are some of the challenges that you encounter? How do you think this project is going to benefit your school and your community? And what would you like to see happen in the next couple months?
Okay, at the beginning of this the whole project, I was a little confused, and I was kind of trying to figure out where it all went. And as we got further along, I really started to see we're doing the service learning and we're going to be communicating, and I was like, oh, I really like this. Service learning, helping our community, and then trying to make it go global a little bit. Maybe, and with elementary school, it's kind of hard to get them to think outside of Swansboro because they are very stuck. I was just talking to my kids the other day, and I said, okay, what's a country outside of the United States? And I got North Dakota. And I said, no, outside of the United States. And we pulled out the map, and we're looking, and they finally kind of caught on, and we were doing pretty well. So I really want to take them out of their little tiny, where they are as elementary school students, and move them outside and see another place and see how they live and see how it's so different. It's not just about the United States anymore. So I really like that. And service learning, letting the kids do a service for somebody else is just wonderful. So I really liked how those kind of parts work together, service learning and global. It was just great. I want to participate again, probably. So.
Yeah, same thing that Molly said. I think our kids, like I said in our introduction, our kids walk through life with blinders on, and they're always going to do that until we take them off, kind of like a horse running down the track. So that's what we try to do at our school, is give them more peripheral about what's out there in the real world. I'm a retired Marine. I did 20 years, so I usually don't hold anything back from my kids. I'm pretty honest with them and about how hard the world is and how, I don't know, just how much we've messed it up for them. So they need to take an active interest in the world because they're going to inherit it someday. And I think us as educators, it's our job and our duty to make sure that we bridge that gap, not just here in the United States, but in the world as well.
Prior to coming to Cato Middle College High School, I worked at a Title I school where the majority of the students were African American. And I saw then the greatest need for a global perspective because they typically did not live beyond the 3-block radius that was their neighborhood. And so even in a metropolis like Charlotte, we have a public school like the Title I school where I work, and then we have a private school like Charlotte Latin. And those students have very different worldviews, and they're only living 5 blocks away from each other. So when you think of a global perspective, it widens everyone's vantage point, including my own. So I think that's one thing I'm really loving about it. I wish I had been able to work with those students more on that when I was at the Title I school. But now that I am at the school that I am at, the challenge that I'm finding is we work on a college schedule. So we start at 11:20. And you know Moldova's time is a little different. So now we're trying to find ways to be able to have face-to-face interaction in real time without having to just do voice. So we're figuring it out.
I'll try to not talk too long, but I use a lot of my background experiences. My first job was in a Title I school, and I looked very different as a 22-year-old compared to everyone else in my classroom. And using music as a tool to bring people together is something that has driven me as a teacher and what's kind of shaped my career with the amount of international studies. One of the things I noticed at my current school, the students, I'm not going to say that they're tracked, but they are academically grouped. Fair statement, right? However, when they come to their electives, they are put into the classroom with folks that they don't normally see. So at the beginning of the year, I made them take a Myers-Briggs test. Yep. And they started learning about how different their personalities are. And so as we work together as a musical team and looking at how each other thinks and operates, it started bringing them together. So we also started talking about where we're all from. And I made them take a survey about, okay, so are you born in Charlotte? Are you born in North Carolina? Are you born outside the country? Where are your parents from? And we had everything from a brand new students from Honduras and Mexico, so first generation ESL students who know very limited English. We had one boy that was adopted from Ethiopia, 2 brothers that came from Bulgaria, and using all their backgrounds to bring them together and to work as a team has been really enlightening, not only for me in my perspective, but for them in their 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old perspective as well. So it's one of the things that's been driving me. With our service project, we started talking about how to use music as social justice, how to be an arts activist. And I think that is a perfect timing from where we are today, and hopefully that they can start following what's going on in our current environment. That's very diplomatic. And what they can do with their voices, what they can do with their background, and how they can support one another and help younger folks as well. I think that's pretty much in a nutshell. And then one more, as the students were talking about it, they are tremendously excited about this opportunity. And I had a group of 7th graders who are not my students come up to me and said, we want to do a project as well. We would like to do a garden at school. And they know that I'm a pretty enthusiast when it comes to outdoor activities. And I said, I can help you do a garden. I don't know much about it, but we'll try our best to get it done. So we have all these little pockets starting to develop within the school as the kids start talking with one another about what they're doing in the music classroom and how that can relate to different areas around the school.
Thank you for sharing the diversity in your classroom. Just a little factoid for you. 2003, the number of languages spoken by the students in our public schools numbered in the 130s. the last number that we collected for this past school year, we are now at 329 different languages spoken by our public school students. So you have a lot of resources in your classroom to bring that global perspective. And thank you so much. It was wonderful getting to see you folks here that are part of the partnership. I know that we have some plans to engage with you, let you know about the State Board of Education initiatives that you could potentially take some advantage of. This gentleman referred to the Global Ready School application, but there's also a Global Educator digital badge that's now available for all of our educators. So we'll talk more about that down the road, but thank you for what you're doing. You are such a treasure for your students. Well done.